But Richard Tice of Reform UK, with the local elections tomorrow, you have possibly noticed that, and I rather hope you have. We've spoken, I should have said, to almost all the parties now, with one big exception, Richard Tice, the leader of Reform UK, whose performance in tomorrow's Blackpool South by-election is being watched particularly closely, joins me now. Sorry, I should have said all of that before. But let me come back to the Rwanda scheme, because...
Yeah, we know it's not a deterrent. This idea is completely ridiculous. Since it received royal assent last Thursday, I believe, some 900 people have already made that crossing. So that literally is current proof that it is not a deterrent. The people in the northern coast of France are laughing at the absurdity of it. And as you quite rightly say, there's no evidence what the people in the Irish Republic are saying with regard to people moving through GB into Ireland. No evidence whatsoever. In fact, there's evidence out today that a lot of it is people who've got false passports from other EU countries flying directly into the Republic. So I'm not buying any of that, frankly, nonsense. The only thing that will stop the votes...
Richard, sorry, it is early days, and my question to you really is, if it works, there is a turquoise-coloured Reform UK fox, and that fox might be shot.
Well, let's wait and see, but we already know it's not working, and I just don't see anything. What we do know is that the numbers of people massing in northern France, ready to come over, and they are unfortunately getting ever more aggressive, ever more numerous. The only way that you stop the boats, it's not to say you're going to deal with the gangs further back or process people faster. We know that doesn't work. The only thing that works is what we're legally entitled to do, which the French authorities should be doing, which is safely picking up close to the beaches of France and taking back to France. We know it works because the Belgians have done it. We know it works because it's a variant of what worked in Australia.
Your colleague, Ben Habib, says let them drown.
No, he does not say that. That's absolutely ridiculous, Andrew. What actually...
Well, listen, let me read you the exchange with Julia Hartley-Brewer. Then you would leave them to drown? Absolutely, he says. They cannot be infant.
That's not what happened. At the beginning of the interview, Julia repeated our policy, and Ben said absolutely, which is to pick up and take back. They then had a hypothetical discussion about what happens if they get to the 12-mile point. Look, the reality is the only way to save lives is our policy. Let's remember, the current policy, Andrew, has already tragically led to the deaths of at least 15 people that we know about. So no one's saying, actually, what we're saying is our policy is the one that saves lives. We know it works. The French are in breach of their international duties under the 1982 Maritime Treaty. Yeah. They should be picking up and taking back. Frankly, we should be suing them for failing in their duties.
But to be absolutely clear, it is not your view.
Of course it's not our policy, Andrew.
At the end.
I'm the guy who's been saying for a year and a half, you've got to pick up and safely take back. And our policy is the policy that will stop people dying here. I think...
you must be a bit irritated with Ben Habib in that case.
Not at all. Ben was quite right at the beginning of the interview when that was agreed.
But then she says you would leave them to drown, and he says absolutely.
No, he didn't say absolutely. It was a fast-moving interview. That's just not a fair reflection of what happened. And no one wants... Our policy is the policy that will save lives, not lead to more deaths. The current policy from both the main two parties is meaning people die, and more people tragically will die. We nearly lost 50 people on the Goodwin Sands over the weekend. I mean, unbelievable. If this doesn't stop, if we don't stop people leaving the shores of France, there is going to be a major tragedy this summer, I fear.
Let's turn to the local elections in that case. Now, you've got candidates, I think, all around the country.
We've got about 12% across the country. Obviously, we're mainly focusing on making sure we've got candidates in every constituency in the general election, but we've got some 250 plus. And the feedback we're getting in certain areas, particularly in the north, is actually very encouraging. And obviously we've then got the by-election in Blackpool South. Well,
you mentioned that, and I was going to too, because in real terms, in terms of what you are looking for the morning after the night before, it's going to be Blackpool South, isn't it, that you're really focusing on?
Yes, we're very focused on that because that's essentially part of our general election parliamentary strategy. And look, the feedback on the ground, we've got a brilliant local candidate, Mark Butcher, and a guy, by the way, who's delivered over the last decade over 250,000 meals to the homeless, the least well-off in that deprived constituency. So a real local hero, and I hope that he secures a huge number of votes.
And as you know, I have to say that we have a list of all the candidates on the website if you're interested in that. We can't get too much into this because it's not fair to everybody else. But let me ask about more generally where the party is standing at the moment, because an awful lot of your hopes for big advance are based on people being disillusioned with the Tories, those 2019 voters coming back and saying we can't stand the Tories any longer and we're looking for somewhere right of centre to go, and it's you. But it's, I think, a general view that the last couple of weeks, Rishi Sunak has done a bit better. He's had the big announcement on defence. He's had the Rwanda bill. Whatever you think of it, it's gone from bill to act. And his dander seems up a little bit. Are you absolutely sure that you're going to win those people over?
What's quite clear is actually he's been reading our contractor policies because, for example, on defence, we say you've got to get to 2.5% in 3 years and 3% in 6 years, and we show how you pay for that. So, yeah, he's talked in essentially what we've been talking about for months and months and months. But the reality is that the whole country is disillusioned with the Tories, and we want a general election sooner rather than later. And we're going to be ready for it whenever it is. But they're not moving up in the polls. I think they're actually, if anything, sinking in the polls. We're heading up. Let's see what happens tomorrow. It's going to be fascinating. Obviously, there's lots of mayoral elections. It's
very, very interesting. Now, we're coming to the end of this interview, and you know perfectly well what the last question I'm going to ask is. You can guess. I'm going to say, is Nigel Farage coming back before the election?
Well, let's wait and see. I've always said the more help he can give, the better. And, the clock is ticking, it's fair to say. Who knows? I mean, it may be that Rishi Sunak gets pushed into calling election in the next 2 weeks. We think a summer election is probably a 50-50, and we're ready for it.